Terrell Thomas, These Urban Times. Good afternoon, Lakeith. How are you today, sir?
Noon, sir. Quite well. How are you?
I'm great, man. I appreciate your time. A phenomenal role. And I want to ask you about that character. I would imagine that it was very hard to play. You play William O'Neill, Bill O'Neill in the film. For those who have not watched the film and had the opportunity to check it out yet, you will be portrayed as Judas, I guess you could say, as far as your role in the film. What was it like actually getting into that character, and how much research did you have to do to play out and live out those experiences?
It was a trip. You know, I didn't have very much research to do on him because, first of all, he died, and also he was doing clandestine operations with the FBI, so a lot of stuff was kept secretive about him. I think that's part of the reason why he chose to give an interview for Eyes on the Prize in the '90s, much later. I think he wanted to try and get things off his chest because he had just done so much. And I got a chance to get my hands on a long form interview from Eyes on the Prize, which is just over an hour long, which expressed different levels and different hues and colors to the character that I didn't really get to see in the snippet that I saw in the original documentary. And part of that, what he said was, I really felt bad about what I did, but I had to continue to play the role. And so I was like, that's interesting. It's a little insight. A lot of the interview was bravado on him trying to create a veneer that protected himself from judgment from people and sort of delusion he existed in, thinking he was actually a member of the FBI, even though he was simply just a confidential informant. So from that, I was able to gather that he might really have felt bad about a lot of the things he did. And got to remember, he was young. So quite a young man at the time. They all were so impressionable. So he was making decisions based on his fear of being sent to prison, more so than anything else. And he tried to sometimes block out and ignore the fact that violence was happening until it got to a point where now he had to face it. And yeah, I just wanted to give a perspective about him that showed him in that light rather than some stale two-dimensional boogeyman that just simply wanted to bring down the Black Panthers. I didn't think that was quite honest to what I gathered.
Well said. Can you also talk to me about your on-screen relationship with Daniel? Of course, you gentlemen have been in films before prior to this one. Can you talk to me about you guys' chemistry?
Yeah, Daniel's a really great, smart individual who's very talented, who I find inspiring. And anytime I see him, it's always good vibes. And we always can't wait to get back on the next project with each other because it's just inspiring. You learn a lot. So it was really good to reunite with him in a larger capacity.
How impactful or instrumental do you feel like a story coming out about the Black Panthers, coming out about Fred Hampton, with everything that was took place in 2020? This is possibly the closest thing we've seen to a civil rights movement in this generation. I don't want to disrespect any of the lives lost or any of the people who were in the civil rights movements in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But what are your thoughts on the film coming out now, and how impactful do you feel like the messaging can be?
I think it's good. It's unfortunately timely, right? Because not much has changed in a lot of ways. So, but at the same time, it's good that we're able to um, revive a story that so many people don't know about and be able to provide this context for where we are in history. So that way, hopefully, people are able to see some of the mistakes that were made mainly by people that enforce the law and people that are in these government agencies made, so that way they don't make the same mistakes, or we hold them to a different standard. And that we also realize when like groups are being mobilized that people like the FBI are infiltrating them. Groups like the Black Panthers, are they infiltrating the white ring ones? Maybe, but they're more likely to infiltrate the black ones. And the way that they show themselves and present themselves creates the narrative that we find around a lot of these black groups. Most of the black groups you find that are uprisings against the injustices that happen are not terrorist organizations, but the way that the infiltration and the media sometimes might portray them, you would think that they are. So we got to be careful about the way that we view these things um, uh, and what standards we hold people in positions of power to.
And then finally, man, before I let you go, and again, I deeply appreciate your time. I appreciate the role in which you portrayed, and getting the story out for people of our generation to actually understand what went on as best as possible. Were you able to sit down with any members of the Black Panther Party who may have ran with with Chairman Fred, if they're still alive? Were you able to actually speak with his son, Fred Hampton Jr., and get a perspective, or even speak with his mother, Fred Hampton Jr.'s mother, and get a perspective of how things were back then?
Yeah, during filming, I didn't speak much with Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. Um, or Mama Kua, who's his mother, because I didn't want to interrupt the energy. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep things separate until afterwards, just so I can maintain and within the character just a sense of detachment from the Panthers. I didn't really want to, get that close to the Panthers. Even the young Panther Cubs who were on set, try not to engage too much because I knew I liked them in myself. So after we got done with the actual filming, me and Chairman Ferdinand Jr. and Mama Koo had great in-depth conversations, and it's just so much love, and I really appreciate them for even being on set every day, Chairman Fred Hampton on set every day to make sure that we got things accurately right. And I think that was very, very useful. So praises be to them.
LaKaith, man, once again, thank you very much for your time. Continued blessings and continued success in your career. Hopefully, I'll speak with you again down the line.
Thank you, sir. You too.